Welcome to the Not Badger for the week ending October 1st, 2016. Here, thanks to our privileged straight cis scum men who are trying to work off the guilt from their crimes of historical and felony oppression, we have compiled a collection of funny, interesting, and hopefully useful clips from our most watched shows. Enjoy the spoils of their hard work. In Polecat Cast number 81, we talk about the news of the week, including the Calais jungle crisis, Delaware University versus Milo, the first presidential debate, and the founder of the Oculus Rift, who turns out to be a Trump supporter.
My thinking on this, my approach to this, honestly, is going to be one of this is an alleged situation. We don't actually have proof that this is happening, so everything that I personally would say about it is going to be in terms of if this is true, then yeah, they're looking at a population that comes from a culture that they've already been told that there is a particular view of women, that women are either angels or demons, that there's nothing in between. So their behavior needs to take that into consideration simply because it is the reality of the situation they're dealing with. And it doesn't matter if reality is misogynistic or not. If you want to be safe and you want to keep the people around you safe and you want to be taken seriously, it might suck and there might be things that need to change in the attitudes of the people involved, but it doesn't change the fact that that is the environment they're operating in, which in a way, makes these women that are doing this incredibly careless. It's not about whether or not they have the right to not be perceived as sluts or to not be treated as less because they've engaged in behavior that they think men wouldn't get criticized for. It's about dealing with reality. And that criticism that, it's misogynistic to say this, that comes from a place of not wanting to deal with reality, not a place of supporting women. If this individual calling this, or the people calling this misogynistic, this criticism of the behavior misogynistic, using that thought-terminating cliche, what they've basically done is say, we can't discuss this problem. We can't discuss these attitudes, and we can't do anything about them. We have to pretend they don't exist and live as if they don't exist and never try to reform the situation because it's misogynistic to admit that it's there.
The Department of Women and Gender Studies at Delaware University wrote a letter to the letter to the editor of the Review, the school's student-run newspaper, advocating for their definition of free speech and how it relates to Milo Yiannopoulos' upcoming stop at their campus on his dangerous faggot tour. In full, and without irony, the letter reads, "To the editor, our department is committed to the principle of free speech. We wish, therefore, to go on record as opposing in the strongest possible terms the invitation that has been issued to Milo Yiannopoulos, who has tried to silence the free speech of others by drowning it out with abuse, hate-filled rhetoric. In an educational context, there is nothing to be learned from his presence except a negative lesson, that the most deliberately offensive and divisive voices are rewarded with attention they do not deserve. That is not what UD should be teaching. The Department of Women and Derp Studies."
So, in order to protect free speech, we have to prevent free speech.
We must stop all the speech before they can say the things we do not want them to say.
This has gotten so common. It's the stupidest argument of like the idea that someone can't talk because someone else said something. Like, really, you can't answer that. You can't say, "Hey, hello, I disagree with you because somebody said something that you disagree with." It's bullshit. You're not drowned out. You're not silenced. You're not, unless somebody comes along and actually covers you up, covers your face with their hand or jumps in and interrupts you and yells louder. It's not preventing you from speaking. And hell, if somebody is yelling louder, get a bullhorn.
Presidential debates can be mean. Women most affected. Last night was the first presidential debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. I wondered, even before the debate had begun, how quickly Trump would be called a sexist for going too hard on the veteran politician and Secretary of State, Clinton. As expected, I didn't have to wait long. Not only did moderator Lester Holt ask a ridiculously baity question about Hillary's appearance, and not only did Hillary play the woman card herself, which everyone on Twitter talked about, but to top it off, a website called QZ.com wrote an article that Trump had committed 51 sinful acts of microaggression on the 68-year-old Secretary of State. QZ called it a textbook example of how men interrupt women, and all too often. The article also goes on to say that Trump's conduct during the debate exemplifies the type of microaggression that belittles women publicly as a way to assert power and to dismiss women. The story also makes a hilarious claim that when the Republican candidate said that Clinton doesn't have the stamina to be president when he was asked by Lester Holt, it is actually coded language, I didn't know this, that says that because she is a woman, she must be weaker. Therefore, not as much stamina. How did we get here? Is this real life? When Trump interrupted Jeb Bush during the GOP debates, most people joined in on the fun, calling him low energy and so on. Feminists had no issue in that case. No matter where you fall in the 2016 election, the one thing is clear. In the hearts and minds of feminists, a woman in a debate is nothing more than a Fabergé egg that needs to be handled with velvet gloves because people having spirited discussion can break them. In the world arena of global politics, people in power do not care about your fifis, ladies.
This is one of the reasons why we are not ready for a female president. It is because she cannot be held to the same standard by the general public and by the media as a man. She can't be held to the same standard of essentially having the balls to deal with things that a man has to deal with every day. Because, let's face it, women interrupt men a lot more than men interrupt women. Women who complain about women being interrupted by men do not feel as though they are not entitled to do the same back. They actually feel more like they're entitled to interrupt and tell men what to do. But this is one of the reasons, this lack of accountability and this lack of expectation of toughness is one of the reasons why we are not ready for a female president. We may not really even be ready for the women we have in Congress, because I'm sure that they're able to do the same thing. And if she can't even be expected to be as tough as a man when she gets interrupted during a debate, how is she supposed to be accountable for her behavior with foreign dignitaries? How is she supposed to be considered accountable when somebody from a country where women's role is vastly different from women's role in the United States treats her in a way that women in the United States have grown accustomed to considering offensive?
Does Angela Merkel, does she get this kind of stuff? I mean, maybe, I don't know. But do they do things like, oh, people who oppose her are sexist because she's a woman? When Angela Merkel makes the decisions that she makes for Germany? Or is that just unique to us? I mean, so that's just something that I would throw in there. But Hannah?
Yeah, I haven't actually seen anything come out of Germany that says that. Nobody's drawn any attention to it, at least sent it my way. But I've seen Americans say that. Oh, you just don't like her because she's a woman. I've seen Americans bitch about that, which, like I said, that just indicates that we're not ready for women in positions of responsibility. Yeah. And we're in a situation now where people mistakenly refer to civil service in terms of only being a position of authority. It is authority in that position is a secondary factor. The primary function of a civil servant is to be responsible. The only reason there is any authority in those positions is so that they can meet their responsibilities. Right. And instead, they get treated like they're some sort of, godlike position that's above the law. And it's bad enough that it's difficult to scrutinize politicians because of that. It's bad enough that we forget we're their boss. They're there to serve us when we deal with the things that they've done. That's bad enough. But you add the lack of ability to criticize and the lack of ability to question, the lack of ability to scrutinize that women enjoy, and it's unique to women. There's no man card that allows men to say, you can't question me because I'm a man, you just hate me because I'm a man, you can't say that about me because I'm a man. That's misandric. That doesn't exist in politics. That doesn't exist in the public eye.
Palmer Luckey, creator of Oculus Rift, is being accused of financing memes, dankness to be determined. In an article by the Daily Beast, Nimble America, the organization Luckey helped to fund, is said to have helped popularize Trump-themed white supremacist and anti-Semitic memes along with 4chan and 8chan, and is trying to prove shitposting is powerful and meme magic is real. Many media outlets also claim that Luckey posted pro-Trump sentiments under the internet alias Nimble Richman. On Nimble America's website, their listed causes don't actually disturb as much shit as you may think. There aren't even any Pepes. The group has put up a billboard with Hillary Clinton's face and "too big to jail" underneath it, and post articles about anti-corruption and legal immigration. The media shitstorm caused Luckey to apologize on his Facebook page in trying to clarify misinformation spread by the media. Luckey admitted to contributing $10,000 to Nimble America because he liked the idea of communicating with young voters through the use of billboards. However, he denied posting anything as Nimble Richman, clarifying that he's actually a libertarian in support of Gary Johnson.
Huh.
Man, this is current year, right? I'm not mistaken, am I?
Oh, you know it.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Because he's involved in gaming, the Daily Beast thinks they own his political opinions, and he has no right to express anything that they disagree with.
You are correct.
They're not actually arguing with him, saying, "Oh, I disagree with what you said because X, Y, Z," like Gamergate does, where they'll actually post information and arguments that are based on logical thinking and things like that. No, just this person said X, they're bad. That's it.
Yes, that is it.
Yep.
You are correct.
Just making sure that there's yet again another act of social justice types claiming ownership of other people.
Basically what they're saying is they're going after him, and they're saying that, his opinions are wrong, so we have to diminish those opinions. And it's funny because we saw a lot of people on Twitter, well, not a lot of people, we saw a handful of indie developers come out and say, we're withdrawing our support of the Oculus Rift until Palmer Luckey apologizes and kowtows to our opinions, basically. Yeah. And they're fucking trying to shame him. They're trying to shame him into fucking towing their line. They're not allowing him his freedom of speech. They're not allowing him his fucking freedom of ideas. And what's even more disgusting about it is they went after his fucking girlfriend too. They tried to use her as a fucking wedge to get in there. And just this whole every day, it's like over the last 4 or 5 years, every day I think we can't possibly get any dumber collectively than we have the day previous. And every day I am proven wrong. We are letting people erode our fucking freedoms and our ability to express ideas and opinions daily with the mere implication that they are offended by them.
I've seen this happen before. And it's very creepy. Like, what feminists use the word creepy so lightly. It's creepy to be watched to see if you're going to do something illegal. It's creepy to have somebody put your address on the internet, but it's even creepier to watch somebody put your friend's child's school address on the internet. It's creepy to see people send beheading videos to your friends online, which I saw happen to some of the guys at A Voice for Men. They were sent beheading videos with the message, "This should happen to you." That's an attempt at silencing someone. Having some guy up on a stage say with flair things that you don't like doesn't silence you. You have every opportunity in the world to say, hey, I think that guy's a fucknut. I think he's wrong. This is what I think, and this is why. It's just the whole special snowflake thing combined with their actual creepy habit of doing shit like this it's entirely hypocritical.
This guy, apparently, he dated this cosplayer that also happened to be a Gamergator and also supports Trump and be sort of more prone to the right side of politics, right? I came across this article from oneangrygamer.net. Apparently, the people over at Gizmodo and a couple of other sites that are typically associated with far leftist politics did exactly what they criticize people in our community for doing, where they directly address somebody on a public platform and then, like, the anti-feminist response videos where they'll respond to them and put the link in the bar below. Well, they hate it when we do that, right? But they did the exact same thing to this woman, where they say, hey, this woman is this sort of thing that we hate, and this other thing that you should hate, and this is why you should go and harass her online. And what happened? She deleted her Twitter account because she couldn't take the level of abuse that was being sent her way. Allow me to demonstrate to you the difference between people that are attacking Lucky and people like us. Who here disagrees with Joss Whedon's politics? Say aye.
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 Who here thinks that Joss Whedon makes some pretty badass nerd entertainment? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. See? There you go.
It's so easy just to let folks talk. Let them tell you. Let them tell you who they are. Because when given a chance, somebody will tell you exactly who they are. They will tell you their motivations. If you're listening, if you're paying attention, and you can see what the reality of the situation is. You don't need to. You don't have to shame them. You don't have to make things up. You can just let them speak, and the unsavoriness of their fucking actions and their words will come fully to the surface and be in light for everybody to see and make a decision about. So, yeah, let them hang themselves. Let them slit their own throats.
Now for Rant Circle number 69. We go through an article written by a woman who has managed to successfully walk off the feminist plantation.
So, I mean, like, I can understand why a woman would do this. I can understand why this is maybe even pro-social behavior on the part of men, and, in terms of backing somebody up that they see who is in trouble and can't really handle things themselves, right? It's an extremely pro-social behavior. But there are all of these shades of obligation on the part of men to white knight for women that I think need to be reconsidered and need to be evaluated as what they are. And it's not that it's male privilege. It really is that it's male obligation, because if things actually do come to, dropping gloves, right? And, gloves off, let's go, between two men, that's going to be a much more costly confrontation for both of those men than it would be any kind of difficulty that leaves a woman, in tears because a man scared her. Like this, we have to actually acknowledge the realities of the situation and the dynamics that are going on and what those dynamics are based on. And they're not based on male privilege.
Feminism does list itself or present itself as female empowerment. The idea that a woman who does have uncertainties or does have anxieties or is shy might gravitate to something that is presents itself in this way. I can see that, and I can also see the deception there, because feminism is not at all about empowering women or making them feel strong or independent. It's the exact opposite. So on the one hand, I don't want to. I mean, if she has anxiety, if she has these kinds of issues, I can see why she would be drawn to something that says that might actually correct them. So I don't want to jump all over her for that. It's I wouldn't. With having her friends, her male friends protect her, yeah, that's sort of an unconscious assumption of service on her part, perhaps. at least she's got to the point where she's questioning the feminist rhetoric around that and saying that this is dishonest.
Let's say you're someone who is not doing well or not doing as well as you hoped or expected at certain things in life, like you don't know what you're going to do with your education, or you're concerned that you're poorer than you should be, and all this. Things like feminism and other social justice causes, they help you because they give you the peace of mind that it's not your fault. It's some other system's fault. It's something outside, and that you should not just fight against it, but you should hate it. You should find every flaw and make it characterize it by those things. So in the case of feminists, it's women everywhere, because we have such low standards for you. Nothing that has happened to you that is negative is your fault. It is the fault of the patriarchy. It's the fault of men. It's the fault of toxic masculinity. It's the fault of all these things. And we're the only ones that can help you see that. Can't really help you with it, because we're oppressed. Also, we have to remain oppressed, otherwise we're not relevant. But we can help you see it so that you can take up the mantle and try to fight it wherever you see it, and try to get men to join you and all that. So.
Oh, and part of the beauty of feminism, at least how it's being taught in academia, is when you have something that has no empirical basis, and that you're being encouraged to link literally everything around you to, everything around you, therefore, is contributing to your lack of happiness in your life.
Yep. And that's basically not not holding yourself accountable or responsible in the slightest way for anything that happens to you. You're just
chemistry
a leaf on the wind.
Yeah. Chemistry is sexist, guys, because of how chemistry is labeled. I've been reading this lately in actually papers submitted for peer review. Yes, how chemistry terminology is inherently sexist. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm like, whoa, really? But if you can take one of the most quantifiable raw sciences, natural sciences, right? And you can turn it into some kind of feminist rhetoric, you've won the world, haven't you?
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's like the game that I played with Karen. Can you turn buttons into how are women victims of buttons? How are women victims of snow globes? How are women victims of pens? How are women victims of paper, ink? How are women victims of fairies? You know, just even abstract concept. Like, how are women victims of participles? You know, just, and if you can manage that, if you can put your brain into that state, you will be the best feminist ever. If you can find the most innocuous possible thing and turn women into victims of it, you will win the feminisms, all of them.
Yep.
Okay.
Being a victim is power. Being oppressed is power.
And hey! I actually turn women into victims of being victims. But do I win all the feminisms? Do I win the supreme feminists?
This is the thing that kills me. Growing up, I have to admit that because I grew up around a lot of women, their issues, I was very sensitive to them more so than I was to my own or to men's issues in general. It really reinforces this belief in my mind that feminism, even though they proclaim to be about empowering women and building up their self-esteem, I fail to see how putting these thoughts into their head would do anything except make them want to curl up into a ball and never want to interact with anybody else again. If that's the outcome of spreading this type of rhetoric and this belief about the way that men act, don't you think that there would be some sort of self-reflection on behalf of the feminist community? Except there isn't. They just double down and try to make sure any dissent doesn't enter.
Yeah. Well,
and this is the perfect example of it. This is what every single time that a woman tries to say that feminism is about empowerment, they need to see this article. And they don't have to agree with everything that this woman is saying. They just have to understand that when you drop this mother load of fear-mongering on top of their head, they got to realize this isn't helping the women that you want to help. You got to modify some things.
Mm-hmm. I would. I know that Bunny put her name in. I just want to throw in there that you said that you put the women in your life before yourself in terms of needs and stuff. I just wanted to throw in there that that's really normal. That's what most men do. That's the way they are. That's why a man that doesn't, like the kind of man who says something like, if women were in danger and I was in danger, I would probably get out of there first and just sort of like save myself. I wouldn't risk my life for someone like that. Those men are usually looked down on and shamed because that's not. And you'll get this from feminists, and you'll get it from traditionalists, where they say that men have to be willing to make sacrifices for women and put women before themselves, and that's pretty normal. I think we're pretty programmed in many ways to do that, and it's helped us survive.
Yeah, and we want to. It's how we develop a positive identity for ourselves.
Yeah,
it's of being of use to others, particularly the opposite sex.
Okay, Bunny, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to say, the author's point about a woman's body being inviolable, that is an interesting point, and it encompasses a lot of what is happening right now, all the way from things like manspreading on the subway to reproductive rights to rape accusations. There is this, and I believe it is largely unconscious, and y'all have explored this in more depth before, but that a woman's body is somehow more sacred and thus needs to be more protected from even the everyday wear and tear of interacting with other humans than a man's body does. A man's body can be exposed to harsh chemicals, but a woman's body shouldn't. And then we have our job differences, yeah? A man's body is expected to take more violence, but a woman's body needs to be protected from violence. And I have also experienced this whole, you can do it to other men, but you do it to a woman, and suddenly, whoa, what are you doing here? And at its core, I can see there's a little kernel, a shining shard of truth there, generally just because of the biological differences between men and women. But when you take those core biological differences and you inflate them to the point where a man spreading his legs on the subway to air out his nuts and his knee presses into your thigh, and suddenly he is assaulting you, that is too far. It's too far. Mm. You are not inviolable in any way more or less than a man is inviolable. But that is the bias of feminism, isn't it? Bodily autonomy, right? Both defensively and offensively.
When she says, how are we to reconcile with our male oppressors when we view them as primitive, aggressive beasts? It's funny how men are both primitive, aggressive Neanderthals, and they also are the most powerful things on the planet at the same time, in the eyes of feminists, or at least in terms of like her experience with country living. I also want to point out that, I don't need to say that. Never mind. But yeah, that was just a thing that I noticed. The strongest, yet the least. Yeah, they smash together.
They smash together the threat narrative you see against Jewish men with the threat narrative you see against black men, and that's the one they direct at all men, including white men. Mm-hmm. It's just
especially white men, but yes,
especially white men. Yeah. It's although in practical terms it plays out in different ways to the detriment of all men of different groups. Mm-hmm. But this is what's so funny about the rhetoric that feminists use directed at men. It's a page right out of Nazi propaganda. It's a page right out of Jim Crow. It's a page right out of every situation where you want to cast a group of people as being powerful and sexually dangerous. For Jewish men, they were pedophiles. So they were simultaneously in control of everything, and they were pedophiles. For black men, they were predatory beasts and rapists. And you just smash those two together and you get feminist theory about men. And it's despicable. I mean, I'm not even going to, there are feminists who are like, you should pay attention to the good No, fuck you. This is despicable. Mm-hmm. The only good feminists in the world are the ones who say, this is despicable. And believe me, they're spending much more time saying, this is despicable, than they are telling me to focus on the good feminists who aren't saying something despicable, like this criminal accusation that men oppress women, or this criminal accusation that that men are primitive beasts who oppress, or whatever the fuck they're on. Would patriarchy theory, which is basically accusing men of a felony criminal offense of oppressing their women, with no defense. No one ever stepped up and said, yeah, you know what, maybe before you accuse men of this criminal felony, maybe they should have a defense in the public sphere. Nobody's ever done that. No. Would that exist without feminism? No, it wouldn't. Patriarchy theory wouldn't exist without feminism. Would the talk about male privilege, which is right out of wartime propaganda, that this privilege is the word that people who analyze hate propaganda use? Like that, they say that privilege narrative is a part of hate propaganda. Would hate propaganda directed at men exist if feminism didn't exist? We're using the term privilege. No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't. No. So it's like you got the good feminists. Well, yeah, that's wonderful that you're good feminists who don't actually believe in patriarchy theory, actually question accusing all men of the felonious criminality of oppressing their women, and don't use hate speech like privilege. Yeah, it's good that you're one of those feminists, but you gotta realize that shit wouldn't exist if feminism didn't exist. So we're gonna be sort of a little cockeyed at you. Be like, well, sure, but that stuff that we're fighting wouldn't exist if this movement didn't exist that you want to be part of for whatever fucked up reason. It's there's a closure here that I'm not getting. I'm sure it'll come to me at some point, or it'll come to somebody who's listening. But it just is like, wow, that is astounding that you want me to give you a pat on the head because you are somehow good, and yet you are part of an ideology that created this shit. Be like, it'd be like somebody who said, well, I'm not one of those bad Nazis. Well, why do you want to call yourself one? It's not even a situation. Yeah. It's not even a situation where feminism is being smeared by the media. You get passes constantly. These are your actions. They're not what media has ascribed to you. These are your actions. There are some other aspects of this that are the parallels I'm seeing that are fucking creepy as hell. But the way I described it is, it won't necessarily come from feminist women. It'll come from feminist men. And this is how it will come from feminist men. Feminist women will degrade the perception of women's strength and resistance and fortitude and mental capacity to such an extent that and create this idea that the most important thing is to defend and protect women. Eventually, feminist men will put in place for your own benefit laws in which protection is enforced. And they'll do it because we will have eroded this sense of independence, the sense of the ability to exist without protection from women. And we will, at the same time as we erode the perception that women can exist without protection, we will increase the necessity of protection. So we completely define, these male feminists are completely defined by protecting women. What do you think is going to happen when you completely erode their perception of women's power, strength, independence, and capability and toughness, simultaneously with inflating the idea that they are defined as men by protecting women? What will happen when they come into a situation where it's a choice between women's freedom and their protection? They will choose women's protection over women's freedom. And this is how, step by step, generation by generation, we will end up in a system virtually identical to Sharia law. And it will be thanks to male feminists.
Well, you gotta remember, freedom kind of sucks, because freedom means you have to do for yourself. It means you have to think. It means you have to work. Hagbard Celine just did a freedom versus security video on cabbies and Lyft drivers and Uber drivers that I thought was pretty insightful. You always trade freedom for security.
Yep.
But it depends on where your bread is buttered. What do you want, right? Do you, I'm not a good house bunny. I'm not a very good kept bunny. It's just not, this is not how I roll. It rubs me wrong. And I think it rubs a lot of people wrong. They want to do for themselves. They want to feel a sense of accomplishment. They want to be challenged. They want to compete. They want to win at life on their own terms. And then you have the other contingent who are like, no, I really don't care if I win. I just want the ribbon. And it's like, and never the twain shall meet. I don't think you can turn one into the other. I think there is this core that you have or you don't. And I'm not sure it can be learned.
The kind of abuse that feminists identify as misogynist. In other words, when men feel that it is acceptable to rape, beat, murder, torture women, it's always in a particular context. And that context is that those women are a threat to our women. So the thing with the feminist men is not only will they bring about, I guess, a Sharia law 2.0 because they prioritize the protection of women over their freedom, they will also beat, rape, murder, torture any woman who disagrees. So, I'm a little bit, that might be extreme to a lot of people, but this is what I've observed about human beings. When men do these things en masse, it's because it's those women over there are a threat to our women over here. It's when they get that in their head. And then they become very, very, very dangerous. And I've seen it. I've seen it happen. I've seen it, in my own personal experience. The guy who evicted me from the convention absolutely seemed like he was in a headspace of sociopathy, because he could not recognize that I was a human being, or anyone there with me was a human being. And my husband was actually really stricken by this, because he tried to appeal to the guy's humanity. But he had decided that we were not human, and that this is an acceptable behavior. Like, there was a whole bunch of male feminists who were crowing about throwing a girl, or a woman, out of a geek space. A week before, they would have been saying, oh, Gamergate is a bunch of horrible misogynists because they throw women out of geek spaces. And here they were crowing about it, because I was a threat to their women. And that's when you see that's when women have that protection that women have for being women. That's when it's stripped away. And you get treated exactly the way they would treat an enemy male combatant. And that's actually sort of scary. And if we don't understand that dynamic, we're not talking about situations where men are sociopathic or abusive or abuse victims, or are troubled in that way. We're talking about this kind of wide-scale violence against women directed by a group of men. When you see that, always takes that form. It takes the form of they are a threat to our women, therefore we are justified in engaging in these wide-scale acts of violence. And if we do not recognize that this is when this happens, we will never be able to successfully combat it and get past this particular level of development as a species.
On Honey Badger Radio number 73, we talked to Cafe's Justin Trottier and Title IX for All's admin, Jonathan Taylor. So, Justin, first off, there are probably people who don't know, a lot about Cafe, and your involvement with it. So, why did you decide that Cafe was needed? What made you say this is something that I need to do?
Well, I've been involved in a number of different causes related to gender and equality and diversity for my whole adult life. I've been involved with women's rights, I've been involved with LGBT advocacy, I've been involved with environmentalism, and time and again, issues relating to men and boys would arise in those contexts, and they would never really be acknowledged as legitimate issues. The perspectives of men and boys, and integrating those perspectives into discussions around gender and around diversity would really be marginalized. So the idea began to come to me, and not just to me, but to other colleagues of mine in these various different organizations that I was previously involved with, that it was time to found a separate organization that could work to legitimize and represent these marginalized issues that have to do with boys and men, and then integrate them into these larger conversations around gender and around diversity. So that was sort of the original concept for what would become the Canadian Association for Equality, or CAFE.
All right, and there are. How did you get this started? Like, how did you get the ball rolling on this on CAFE? I know that's kind of a broad question, but...
Yeah, I mean, the cafe is a large organization and encompasses a large number of people, so everybody has their own reason for having gotten involved with the organization, including many of us who were involved in the founding of it. But for me, it was really seeing that there was this missing piece of the puzzle, as I was describing, and feeling that everybody would be better served, certainly the boys and men, but also everybody else who were affected by boys and men's issues. And so what is the most important focus for Cafe right now is operating Toronto's first men's center. It's called the Canadian Centre for Men and Families. It's been an active, vibrant men's health facility since it was founded 2 summers ago. And there we deal with a lot of untreated mental health issues, domestic abuse issues for men where they were not able to find support and programs anywhere else in the community. And by doing that, by giving them the support that was lacking, we're not only improving their lives, but we're also improving the lives of their families and the larger community. So I see our work as very much collaborative and in the spirit of improving the well-being of everybody in our society.
Why do you think there is that kind of resistance to advocacy for men?
Well, a lot of it does go to those misunderstandings about what our motives are, but I guess some of it is unfortunately more malicious than that. Some of it is based on this belief that there's kind of a zero-sum game that is operating, and that any organization that's talking about men's issues or boys' issues, or even worse, asking for some funding or some attention on social services or health services for men and boys, that will have to come from somewhere else. That will have to come by way of taking those resources away from other groups, maybe women's groups, maybe LGBT groups, whatever it is. And again, I want to reiterate, what we see that we're doing is actually collaborating with other agencies and building a stronger matrix of supports for everybody in our community, not as taking from one pool to use somewhere else, but really as all of us working together to do a better job for everybody who might need help in our communities. So when we're talking about programs and services, we get a lot of positive response. When we go in to campuses, on the other hand, and we talk about more controversial public policy issues, or we bring potentially provocative speakers to campus, there we get a different response, even to this day. And we've noticed that depending on the environment and the context, there seem to be sort of different rules at play. So the environment where we have the most blowback would be the universities and colleges that we have provided events on campuses in Canada. And we can get into why that is. But even there, I think the response has become much more positive over the last year or so. When we got started as an organization, this was back in 2012, nearly every event we hosted was protested. And I don't mean a peaceful protest. I mean something better described as a riot, where people would attend. They would set up shop outside of the venue. They would block people from attending the event. They would prevent people from actually exiting the building by blocking the doors, which is obviously a safety hazard. They would pull the fire alarm. They would bully and intimidate and harass people, and they would just get very nasty to anybody who had the audacity to just want to hear what the speaker had to say. That's what greeted us when we set up shop in Toronto 3 to 4 years ago now. We've continued to have events on various campuses, but in particular at the University of Toronto. And we've been doing that roughly once a month for the last 4 years. Most of the last few events we've hosted have had no negative responses whatsoever. And in fact, they've been very positive events, very open conversations that we've managed to foster. So I definitely think that there is something that has changed. And why that is, I think it's a combination of things. I think our reputation has certainly increased. More people have learned about us, so they know that we have a positive agenda, not a regressive agenda. And I think, frankly, the more radical groups that have tended historically to make trouble for us, they've pretty much learned that we're not going away. And I think they've just got kind of bored. They've probably found other things to occupy their time with. So for whatever reason or combination of reasons, I think we've become more of a mainstream presence at a number of universities in Canada, and that's a very good sign. more and more we're getting referrals from other organizations which show that we are becoming increasingly accepted as a partner in our community. And so setting up the center, but continuing to do the advocacy work, which will have a long-term positive impact in Canada. I think that mix of different approaches that we're taking, services, advocacy, policy work, videos and multimedia, and then the events that we continue to do, which raise awareness, choosing to do all of those things and do all of them well, I think has been an important kind of operational decision that we as an organization have made. If you go to equalitycanada.com, from the top menu, you'll see all the various areas we're involved in, which I was just describing. But in particular, look at the research section. You'll see literature reviews, you'll see research briefs for a whole bunch of different areas of men's issues and men's health. And then you'll see policy papers, which we have put out that are based on research. And they're policies around the consequences of fatherlessness, policies around the realities of domestic abuse and sexual abuse as they affect boys, men, and families in Canada. So that's the place that I would send people. And I would also remind listeners that we have a whole second website for all of the programs and services that we do at the Men's Center, and that website is menandfamilies.org.
Is there anything that you could, anything that our listeners or listeners could do to help you, pursue your focus in men's issues? So anything to do to help cafe or help events or what? How can they get involved, essentially?
By getting involved, and there's so many different ways to do that. And we are a volunteer-driven and led organization, so there is any number of ways that people can contribute, and we're very good at finding ways that each person can make a unique contribution, no matter where they are. Obviously, if they're in Canada, then I would encourage them to get involved with a local cafe chapter or a men's issues group at their local university or college. But even if they're not in Canada, they can get involved with our research projects. They can get involved by doing technical work, graphic design, web design, etc. There is definitely a way for you, whoever is listening to these words, to make a meaningful contribution to this cause and to the people whose lives it actually touches.
The first thing I wanted to ask you is, you used to have a website called A Voice for Male Students, but you've recently made a new space, Title IX for All. Why did you decide to do this change?
Well, some of you may be familiar with the website A Voice for Men, and I think they do really good work. Although, really, originally my website was very similar to A Voice for Men, in that it was really kind of like a blog. And over time, and really this is how a lot of men's websites start out, they kind of have a blog with opinion pieces and things like that. But over time, it just kind of evolved beyond the original concept of it. And so we began adding more and more like data warehousing elements to it. And eventually we came up with these databases, which we essentially built from scratch. And so really just kind of developed a different kind of concept and really took on a sort of different life. And so for various reasons, I think, early on I kind of struggled with, this name or that name, and I've always had a problem, I think, with naming the website. So I knew that a change was in order eventually. So one of the reasons, so that's one of the reasons why I decided to name it Title IX for All. Also, some people thought that, Paul Elam may have a hand in, Title IX for All, or in a Voice for Male Students. That just wasn't the case. I mean, sometimes there was and sometimes I got some weird emails of people who thought that I ran the A Voice for Men website, which was just bizarre to me. But so nonetheless, for clarity's sake alone, that was a good reason. But another good reason was that the website really began to deal more with professionals as the audience. So really like academic professionals, legal professionals, risk management professionals. And the thing that we always come back to when it comes to men's and boys' educational equity issues is the federal law, Title IX. That is just a key reference point, that whenever you say Title IX, a light bulb flicks on in these people's heads that says, oh yeah, this, gender equity in education, federal law, it's definitely something that every professional who is concerned about gender equity issues knows, and really most people who work especially in higher ed know the law anyway. So there were a lot of, I did a lot of testing on various names, and I could definitely go more into the theory of why I chose this name, but really those are the main reasons why. Sometimes it's good to be attacked, I have to say, because that creates controversy, and then brings more people there, and then people who are on your side will tend to support you. It kind of galvanizes support sometimes, but I got to say I've been pretty lucky. I know that Mother Jones interviewed me. I think it was in 2014, and there was a reporter named Molly Redding who I knew by the kinds of questions that she was asking, she was definitely trying to bait me every way that she possibly could. What she didn't know is that I recorded the conversation so I could play it back at any time, and that's what I've done a lot of the time is I've recorded the conversation. So and depending on which state it is, I may tell them or I may not. I'll have to follow the laws of the state, but yeah, that's always my recourse if they ever decide to pull a fast one on me. But there was one reporter, I can't even remember the other reporter's name who did something that was partially fair and then partially unfair, but she was just kind of like a little gadfly that didn't really create any kind of reasonable furor over my work. Right. But I think that one of the benefits of having a data-driven platform, and that's really the centerpiece of the platform, is just having these huge databases, is that it's really hard to attack. It's like, what are people going to say? Like that, I'm recording, I have too many lawsuits in my database or something. Like I'm recording the data too well. It's not just my opinions that I'm putting out there. It's probably one of the most intellectually authoritative platforms in the entire men's movement. So it's very hard to take what I do and translate that into just some kind of, I don't know, rantings of some unhinged, opinionated, Neanderthal on the internet. It just doesn't work. So I'm wanting to create a database on that includes the names and contact info of every Title IX coordinator in higher education. Now, these Title IX coordinators are really the enforcers and the overarching authority on gender equity in higher education. And there are some who are a little bit sympathetic, but many are not. But to men's and boys' education issues. But kind of the good thing about what I'm doing is, they don't have to necessarily be sympathetic to men's and boys' education issues. I don't think I'm going to change their minds by reaching out to them to care or give a damn about men and boys. But what I hopefully can do is speak to their interests in not getting sued, and and to that effect. Once I get the contact information of all of these guys, although 70% of them are women, I think that would be an excellent way to just start a nationwide campaign informing them of their legal, in a nice but firm way, of their legal responsibilities and the trend in the legal trends involving many people who are winning cases against these higher education institutions. And I think what we have to remember is that these Title IX coordinators, really, they are kind of like a risk management type of officer. They're not necessarily the kind of empathetic people that they're often made out to be. Really, they're kind of like a CYA, protect the university, protect the institution kind of person. So I think from that angle we can start to get some headway. And hopefully along the way, we can also displace some of the voices of these other institutions that are advising them to do some very bad things. One of them being United Educators, which is a risk management firm that tells them to like go out and destroy documents of administrative proceedings and things like that. I may be rambling here, but I've seen these cases where so risk management has become this insane industry in higher education, and everyone's trying to tell these Title IX coordinators to do the wrong thing. We need to tell them to do the right thing, and to do that, I think we need to get as many of their names as we can. We now have some incredible reports that we've made off of these cases, these lawsuits. There have been like 51 lawsuits that have been decided in the last 3 years in the courts, although over 150 have been filed. And of those 50 that have been decided just within the last 3 years, 30 out of those 50 have had outcomes that are at least partially favorable to men and boys. And if someone is in like a kind of if someone's a Title IX coordinator, they're going to want to know how that happened, why that happened, etc.
Say someone else wants to do something. What are some things that they may want to think about that maybe you had not considered when you were starting it that they might want to be aware of?
Well, if you're wanting to do that, definitely make sure you're in it for the long haul. Definitely make sure that either you have substantial technical expertise or you're willing to learn or work with people who do and who can be a readily accessible resource for you. If you are, I would say to always remember that so much of activism, and really I think that, I'm very big into data, but really I see the data as really a tool to do something bigger than that, and that is to create relationships. And I think at the end of the day, activism, the main work of activism is really about creating and maintaining good relationships. So always nurture the relationships that you have. Always be willing to, don't let things die on the vine, and things will tend to work out, often in ways you may not expect. Whenever female students sue their universities, the burden of proof that they have to meet in a Title IX claim is really quite low. What they have to prove is that the university was, quote unquote, deliberately indifferent to their needs, to their claims, and so forth. And if that standard is met, then the university is liable. Meanwhile, and that's all they have to do to prove discrimination, was that the university was basically insensitive to them. And that's a pretty easy standard to meet. Meanwhile, the standards that young men have to meet is not only do they have to meet that standard, they have to meet a higher standard, which is basically saying prove the university would have not done the same thing if you were a female. And that's much harder to do when 99% of those who are accused of sex crimes are men, because these very few women are falsely accused of sexual assault because they're not accused in the first place.
I actually was inspired through this whole process of purchasing the Badger Cave, and just trying to figure out, just trying to think and feel what beyond the practical reasons that have been outlined multiple times, what this space really said to me. And so I developed the idea, and I mentioned this on the stream that I did with you, Mike, and Karen, Brian, on the Badger Cave, but this idea of a brain trust. So the idea of creating a helpline for men that's not a helpline, it's a do-it-yourself. So it would have people who are not just experts in mental health and giving men the tools to improve their mental health, but also experts in other things like cameras, video cameras, animation, art, even car repair. But so that men could actually work as they work on their mental health, they can also work on projects, and do positive things to improve their skills, improve their lives as they develop something. And this came out of the stuff, the conversations that we've been having with Tom Golden and how men process their grief, and men tend to process their grief in an exterior way. In terms of, so he would give them a project to help them visualize and go through their grief. And I was thinking, well, why don't we extend that as a more masculine way of approaching mental health, as more of a do-it-yourself project in the context of a helpline that helps out with other things, pursuing other talents, pursuing other projects, pursuing other skill sets. So that was what my idea was.
Now on to Fireside Chat number 46, where we drink the poison Kool-Aid with Bane666AU. Why the poison Kool-Aid? Why did you go with that as your
Well, it's a warning against drinking the poison Kool-Aid or swallowing a toxic ideology without question. It comes from the Jim Jones Jonestown massacre, the term poison Kool-Aid.
And while I'm here, what is it with you guys and skulls? I mean,
I didn't get a mention in that.
What?
I haven't watched it all the way to the end. Yeah,
we're talking about the questions for anti-SJWs, and there was one guy. I don't know who he is. I don't think I've ever seen him before. But he said, "What is it with you guys and skulls?" And then he showed Davis Arini, and then Mundane Matt and Ralph.
Oh,
and he never mentioned me though. I was so disappointed.
That is disappointing. I figured you'd be the original. What do you mean? I mean, skulls are fucking cool. That's all it is. I'm fairly certain. Skulls are, we all have them.
Everyone's got one. It's the only body part you can show without being ableist.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're cool. They're metal. I mean, skulls are cool. So yeah, that's a stupid question. I don't
know. I mean, the thing is there anyone else with a skull on our side apart from us four? I guess there must be one or two, but there's animals everywhere, animal avatars everywhere. I thought that would have been a better question.
I think so too. Yeah, like
the funny thing is, in one of the few articles I've been mentioned in on We Hunt at the Mammoth, one of them was about skulls. I think it was called something like "Maybe You're the Bad Guys" or something like that, and it talked about Davis Arini, Mundane Matt and myself all using skulls in our avatars, and maybe that means that we're the bad guys or some shit. Like, is that the best you've got on me?
Wow.
Futurale? I mean, seriously? I use a skull in my avatar?
Nazis did have skulls on their uniforms, but not as their avatars. They didn't represent themselves as dead people, because that's not what a conquering people do. They represent their enemies as dead people.
You're probably best known for the series entitled The Propaganda of Toxic Feminism. You've done 49 of those videos. And,
trying to get 50 done.
Well,
Mike?
I was just going to ask you.
Bane's many projects. Bane has like 6 or 7 projects in the air at any given time. And I don't know what the deadline is for any of them.
I'm constantly juggling.
But episode 50 is one of them, I believe.
So so that was basically my next question was, are you done? 49 is like you're just leaving us hanging on almost 50.
Yeah, to give spoilers, I guess, but the concept of 50 is to get some other people in to help me out and do some segments.
Because your channel is very focused on keeping clarity within the MRM, do you have any issue with people muddling that? Do you have any opponents that you have to deal with?
You mean just about every feminist in the media?
But do they come after you specifically, I mean? Do you have any issues with that? Or
people on the other side tend to leave me alone. I've had a couple of articles from Dave Futrell about me, but nothing really serious. I had that, what's the fitness guy? I can't think of his name.
Fitness guy?
Yeah, some fitness guy who wrote an anti-MRA article for Time magazine. James Fell, I think his name is. I did a video about some bullshit he wrote about the men's rights movement, and someone posted it to him on Facebook, and he said he didn't have time to go through it, but he then tried to hunt me down, and he found some guy in Queensland called Bane666 on a dating site. Yeah. I've never been to Queensland, by the way, so it wasn't me. But they found a photo of this guy, and they were making fun of him, the way he looked, and all the rest of the shit. So I found it funny that he had time to try to hunt me down, but he didn't have time to actually watch my video and deal with the criticism that I brought up. Yeah. And I had another article, I can't think of the guy's name. He wrote some article on his blog after I left a comment about the Mad Max thing.
Is it Aaron Clary? Well, that's the guy who wrote I think that's the guy who wrote the Mad Max article, but he was from the...
It wasn't his article. It was someone else claiming that MRAs would be pissed off over the what was the Marvel TV series a year ago? Was it Jessica Jones?
Are you talking about? It was either Jessica Jones or Agent Carter. Probably Jessica Jones. That was the one that was on Netflix.
Yeah, it was Jessica Jones. But I left a comment saying I thought it was a great series. We don't have an issue with it. We don't have an issue of strong women. I mean, Karen's a strong woman. If we had an issue of strong women, why would she be the most popular MRA?
Yeah.
So he wrote an entire article, and he called me a misogynist. He said, watching his videos, you can clearly see that he's a misogynist, but he never gave any examples of why I was a misogynist. And then he spent like the next paragraph attacking my name and going on about not using my real name and showing my face and being a coward and shit, which had nothing to do with anything I've ever said, of course. It was just a derailment, a distraction.
Yeah.
And then he went on to say how MRAs want Mexican brides because they're easier to control or some shit.
What?
I have no idea.
Did he really say that?
Yeah, he really said that. I thought he must have got it from Return of Kings, so I went and had a look there and couldn't even find it there.
So I hope he doesn't.
It's amazing.
I hope he doesn't believe that Mexican brides are easier to control, because I think that says a lot more about him than anything else. That's crazy.
This is a guy who claims to be writing a book about the men's rights movement and has done a ton of research, apparently.
Research, yes.
Yeah, air quotes, research. But I've never heard the Mexican bride thing before. I have no idea where he got it from. It's not even on Return of Kings, so I don't know where he got it. Sorry?
SNL, isn't it? That sketch that Lena Dunham did.
I never thought of that. That could be it.
Yeah. It went out to millions of people, remember. It must have gone in someone's memory hole.
Again, what?
Yeah, maybe that's where.
Maybe. Yeah, that was I think it was...
Extensive research. I watched an SNL skit a fucking year ago.
It's going to be a great book if that's his research.
Do you think that talking against feminism is, because I know that you've been, since you've been talking to the skeptic feminists and stuff, do you think that discussing or criticizing feminism is helpful to men's rights, or is just kind of a side thing? Do you think it's like less important?
I think it's both necessary, but also sometimes harmful. I think it's necessary because they're the ones controlling the narrative and often standing in our way. So we don't really have a choice but to address it. But it can be harmful because it's often used to derail the conversation about men's issues, and we're accused of just hating women or feminists or whatever, as opposed to really caring about what we're talking about. So it's a double-edged sword in that way.
So you're saying that if people are spending too much time, like say, there are people who are not MRAs, they're just anti-feminists, or they're just sort of... maybe they just call themselves rationalists, and they just make content that's against feminism. And you're saying that because they do that so much, and even MRAs do this too, I'm not saying they don't, but like Karen, for example, she considers herself an anti-feminist first and an MRA second. So she's more interested in attacking feminism because she thinks that if that doesn't get torn down, then men's rights can't happen. But
and I would agree with her. I would agree with her 100%. The side effect of that, though, is that it's used as an excuse to derail discussions about men's rights.
So when you say it's used as an excuse to derail discussion, do you mean that feminists use the criticism of feminism as a way to derail it, or actual anti-feminists derail from?
We hear it all the time that they're not really interested in men's issues. They're only interested in shitting on feminists or women. It's a bullshit excuse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they want a men's rights movement that never criticizes feminism. And yeah, I think that's been tried multiple times.
Who are your favorite MRA or anti-feminists or anti-SJW YouTubers? Yeah, a couple of them.
It's a very, very long list.
You have to pick them. No. And you have to throw everyone else under the bus that you don't pick. So if you pick Dr. Rhetorican, that means you don't like Spinosaurus Kid. No, I'm kidding. Or vice versa.
I've always been a big fan of Maikaru. He's one of the first ones I came across. And I wish he'd make more videos, though. I love his content.
I love his content, too. He's hilarious.
I always enjoyed Doc's videos, Karen's videos, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Alison, when she used to make videos. I know she mainly does honey badgers now, but a lot of her videos were pretty good too.
Yeah, Allison's got a video coming. It may come out this weekend. So she has one, but she doesn't do
what's going to happen?
What?
As soon as we get off air, I'm going to think of about 10 people I should have mentioned. But
Bane Speaks.
It always happens.
Bane Speaks. That guy's got a great channel.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he does. I think you've been on some of the hangouts he does, haven't you, Doc? At least a couple.
Yeah, like I swear there's loads of people I met on your last New Year's hangout that I just don't remember.
Is that the one where you ran for? Is that the one where you ran it for 6 hours and you basically had like over 50 people on?
Yeah, and the first 2 hours got chewed up like a cassette tape. Like that often happens with our hangouts, but then it gets righted after an hour or so. It goes, okay, there's the whole thing. But this one got chewed up, and it's been chewed up ever since, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it's the first hour and 40 minutes, which had Sargon and Teal Deer on together. I think that might be
the first time on the internet. Yeah, the first time they met, and it's been chewed up. Oh, that was like one of the best sort of meetings of that was like a who's who.
A lot of people think we're not part of a community, but I think clearly we are.
Yeah?
Yeah, haven't you heard some people say, oh, it's not really a community?
Well, I think there's... Oh, go ahead, Mike.
What does it mean to commune? I don't want to get AIDS piggy about this, but it relates to the word commune, and to commune means people getting together. Anywhere where people have hangouts regularly and know each other is describable, as a community. It's one of those words that's iffy. Not as iffy as problematic, but it's starting to get iffy. I think we're just seeing iffiness in words where it's not necessarily there, which is understandable because we're surrounded by people trying to destroy the English language one word at a time. But some words can be saved. I think the word community is possibly worth saving.
I think some people are scared that community equals echo chamber.
Yeah, I think so too. That's what I was thinking, is that there's a concern that by saying I'm part of community X, it means, that it's an echo chamber, even though it clearly isn't. I mean, there's always some infighting going on. I wouldn't even call it infighting, but there's always some disagreements that are happening specifically because we aren't that way.
But also, I would say that a lot of the feminists are part of our community, depending on how you define community, of course.
You mean like Kevin Logan?
But I would consider myself in a community with Russian Deadpool, for example, and Kevin Logan, and even someone I haven't spoken to before, like Christy Winters. We're all part of the gender community, I guess you could say.
It's a little bit like a school. It has goths and it has jocks and it has in-betweens, and they're all part of the same community, even if they hate each other.
Yeah, and there's lots of crossover.
Yeah.
And even though Russian Deadpool and myself might disagree on a lot of the gender stuff, we're still part of the atheist community, for example.
Yes.
So it's not black and white. It's everyone's part of lots of different communities, and there's lots of different crossover.
Yeah, there's like overlapping circles. Because I don't think that, for example, I know Karen is an atheist, but Allison does not consider herself an atheist. So, as an example.
And Dean Esme definitely doesn't consider himself an atheist.
Wait, no, are you kidding? Seriously? I never heard of this.
I'm good friends with Dean, but that's one topic we disagree on and haven't really spoken about.
So he's spiritual, but not religious?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit? Okay.
But that's why things aren't black and white, because like Russian Deadpool and myself will disagree on some things and agree on others, and Dean Esme and myself will disagree on some things and agree on others. So it's not all black and white. It's not all everyone on this side thinks exactly the same way and everyone on that side thinks exactly the same way. It's a lot more complex than that.
Finally, we move on to cherry stem number 12, where we talk about the Big O. No, not the cartoon show, you weebs.
So I want to talk about actual difficulties where your body is
working against you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yes, let's talk about that.
Okay. Well, I will say, no, I'm fine with it. So with what I have a neurological disorder called Charcot-Marie-Tooth. So I have, for all intents and purposes, I have nerve damage and I have deadened feeling in a lot of areas, mostly my limbs, my hands, my legs, all of that. And so, that's an issue, but there's also deadened feeling elsewhere, especially when I am on painkillers that I'm on every once in a while. I can't really feel much of anything sexually. I mean, I can, and it's great, but, getting over that hump.
Well, that's actually a good point that you bring up painkillers, because SSRIs is something that's going to be brought up in the article, and there is decreased sexual drive from SSRIs, but painkillers specifically, that's if it's like directed to the area where there's pain and that's in a general zone and it completely numbs it, obviously that's one thing, but also just in general, any kind of opioids, they're going to make your entire system respond very differently. There are some people who say, some women, sometimes lesbians, they do report a higher degree of having orgasms without stimulation, sort of thought orgasms, or just kind of orgasms from visual or ideas or a scent, or, a more ephemeral things like that. And the evidence on it is not super solid. And what I personally would say is happening is that there are different levels of orgasm, or rather of sexual arousal. And I've experienced, not an orgasm, but I've definitely experienced something different and very sexual when doing certain types of core presses. And my question is, and I know we can't really answer this right now, and I would love to do more research on this, but it seems to me that, and okay, so there's evidence. And
so more of a smooth continuum is kind of what you're getting to, instead of, in other words, maybe an orgasm not being a binary thing, but there's a lot of different levels and different kinds.
Someone said, wait, vaginal orgasms don't exist. So you said that they appear to be largely a myth, this concept that women have two different kinds of orgasms, the clitoral orgasm and the vaginal orgasm. But there are peaks that happen through vaginal intercourse that may be what people are reporting as vaginal orgasms, but they are not technically orgasms. They're kind of a different thing altogether. Is that what you're saying?
The idea is too that, you see in porn or in movies or whatever, that's like, or kind of that is given to you that man, woman has sex, man comes, woman comes, just through penetration. And it's like, that would be called a vaginal orgasm. And it's like,
that's not
no. No.
Well, that's why it's porn in movies where they come together at the same time, and it's like the music.
That's fine. No problems with that, because we frequently
if they're stimulating the clit.
Right.
You have to be,
right.
You have to be stimulating the clitoris.
I think that for a woman to have an orgasm, aside from all the physical stuff, which I know we're going to get into, it seems to me that one of the things that people often overlook is that there is a mental component, which you were talking about when you were talking about the benefits of the vibrator. And one thing that I think that we often overlook is, or most people do, is that having an orgasm is basically, or allowing yourself to have one, is like an act of submission. It's like an act of just like letting go of everything that's on your mind, and allowing yourself to like just
give up,
live in that moment and give up, exactly, and submit to the moment. And if you have your mind on all kinds of other shit, you're not going to get there, because you're going to be concerned with just, do I look fat right now? What time is it? It's getting
But
light
also,
out. I think
if you're fed a rhetoric of men versus women, of men, basically like this article does, of men don't care about you, men don't want anything to do with you, men actually probably hate you, and they just want their orgasm and be done with you. That sounds like an old paranoid grandma that I actually grew up with, that so many women grew up with and have in their heads at all times. That's what feminism is, an old fucking paranoid spinster grandma that is just ruining relationships between people, and it's ruining female ability to relax and give up and surrender. And guess what? Femininity and submissiveness, they have benefits for women.
I had the advice given to me as a 12-year-old to never trust anything a man says when his dick is hard. Like, what kind of shit is that to tell someone?
Especially when you're 12.
What kind of shit is that to tell 12? All kids see on a little device they have in their pocket right there, they could pull it out and have instant access to any kind of sexual knowledge, quote unquote. But it's not knowledge, because it's not supplemented by actual facts, where it's the school's job, it's the parents' job, it's the educator's job. It's not porn's job to educate you. But at the same time, I'm very passionate about normalizing human bodies as they are and having as realistic porn as possible while also being hot, which is, not as challenging as queer feminists would make you think. But still, it is a problem. There is a bit of underrepresentation of reality. But once again, it's not porn's job to educate you. And yet all that parents do, they don't give any real talk about sex. They give you shame talk. And you're like, great. So all I have are these fucked up ideas about sexuality and no actual clue what to do with it once I grow up. Because guess what? Men
Porn is also driven by capitalism. So basically, in other words, like for instance, we have to, and specifically even in our own lives, we can't show the slower buildup that we have more on our own, because that's just not going to make us money. So what we have to show if we want to be able to make money is something that is a little more quick and to the point, and it's
yeah.
Porn isn't. I don't think porn has a responsibility to educate anyone anyway. It's
exactly.
Entertainment. That's like saying,
but it is having an effect.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. But I mean, like, to make the argument that porn, if people are making the argument that, why isn't porn teaching me about sex? That's like saying, why aren't video games teaching me about how to like martial arts or
no, they're not making that argument, but they are making an argument that porn is teaching them the wrong thing and video games are teaching them the wrong thing. Both porn and video games are teaching men how to hate women. That's what we're hearing. That's how it's coming out.
But we were supposed to be focusing on Shannon. What happened to that?
So cripple sex. Let's talk about problems. I hate talking about problems, but let's talk about problems and difficulties and how you overcome them and how.
Let's talk about solutions with the problems, though.
Yes. Well, I will say positions are kind of an issue because for one, I have a spinal fusion. And
have you tried a triangle pillow thingy?
We usually just pile up all the fucking pillows we have.
Right. That's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
Here we have in the article somebody complaining about guys not asking her to have orgasms as frequently as she likes or something. And here we have, on the other hand, somebody with a disability who cheerfully, basically still tries to have orgasms despite not just physical issues, but also, like interference from pain pills and other stuff. So what is your remedy, or kind of how do you maintain your attitude of positivity? Like, what is your secret of just not being a whiny bitch is what I'm saying.
Okay. Well, so she's complaining that guys aren't asking her to orgasm,
basically kind of thing. Basically, yeah.
Okay,
well, reasons why there's an orgasm iniquity, and no, it's not that women are harder to please. And then it just talks about how people believe women are less sexual, and pornography privileges male pleasure.
Oh, good God. Okay,
and there's a blue balls, and yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So no one should be asking you to come, unless that's your thing that you're into, oh, I can't come unless you ask me, fine, but tell your partner that, that's a communication issue on your end. You are in charge of your orgasm, getting your mind in that space. You shouldn't have to expect someone who doesn't know your preferences to, hey, would you mind coming for me? What? No, that's not how that works. If you feel like someone has a fucking problem with you or doesn't care about you,
Lena,
talk to them.
As I mentioned, she rubbed it down there a few times when she was younger, and it happened. I like how she didn't specifically say she orgasmed, because she's likely 9 when she's doing this. There's 6 is one of the ages. Well, okay, 3 is the first age where you become primitively sexually aware of yourself. As a being with genitals. And then, as plenty people have seen, if they hang out or have been, that sounds so creepy. If you have kids or nephews or whatever, and you've been around playgrounds, you may have seen little 3-year-old boys grabbing their junk. It's kind of awkward. It's like seeing animals like bonobos have sex. You're like, oh, don't do that in public. But, that's been my that's what I saw in the yard, because growing up in Russia, you live in an apartment building, and everybody hangs out in the yard where there's some kids installations and some benches and shit, and everybody's kids hangs out together during the day, and the older ones babysit the younger ones, and it's just, you see all the kids. So then there's 6 years old when you kind of start being oh, I like boobs, I don't know, or butts, I don't know why, I like them. Yeah. So then you have the 9 years old, which is when a lot of times 9 or 10 people, when they start sexually feeling themselves, discovering, masturbating type stuff. And then, of course, when we reach puberty, whenever that is for people, anywhere between 12 and 15, 16, that's when you start getting super horny and humping everything. But so for her, she says, she discovered, she was young when she came to discover masturbation, long before she knew what orgasms were. And she rubbed down there for a few minutes, and it happened. It likely was not an orgasm, but whatever. So
you can't take away her lived experience with your facts.
Well, I'm not taking away her experience. I'm just reframing it in a factual light. It's still a formative experience. I remember my experiences quite strongly too, where I basically masturbated with implements. And basically what it was is just cervix stimulation. And after a while, it reached sort of a peak, but then it didn't go anywhere. And it was kind of like, well, what do I do now? And then it was just kind of like, well, I don't want to do this anymore. So it kind of it's like, I would classify that as an orgasm if I didn't know what the fuck they were. So basically that's where we're at. But it is a formative experience for that age. Sure. It is something you feel like you accomplished something. There's a somewhat of a level of satisfaction. It's just not an orgasm. You're 9. Calm down. So, no. So then she says it was all about society, told her that magazines, comedy routine, sitcoms. I'm not sure why she's listening to those. But I mean, she does have a valid point, even though unintentionally. That has been my point all throughout the past year or two, however long I've been on the Badger shows, where it's like we have, as humans, we have this experience or ability or a need, I guess, to learn about what humans do and how to behave and what humans look like and just everything about humans from observing each other. And this happens in primates, this happens in tribes. You see the people around you. However, we live in such a fragmented, isolated situations frequently, and a lot of times children growing formative years sort of are spent watching entertainment and watching television. And it just happens to be the group of people that growing humans see most frequently, and that informs their opinions or expectations about just humans in general. Obviously, real life experiences are going to augment that, but as you're growing up, there are certain assumptions that you make based on the humans that you study growing up, which is what primates do. Unfortunately, it usually happens to be television. So that's kind of one of my issues with that. We need to have knowledge that that's what happens, and we need to, anyway, none of that matters. So what she's talking about is she had an experience with sitcoms and comedy routines and magazines that taught her that her body and vaginas are complex and mysterious. Well, I'm pretty sure feminists are the ones who perpetuate part of this idea that vaginas are mystical and magical and complex. So I'm not sure.
I'm only saying this because I know because this is an everyday feminism article. All of this stuff comes to men hate women, and these are the reasons why. Misogyny. And it's not misogyny when you have ignorant teenagers that are trying desperately to figure out navigate this entire sexual, arena, as it were, while their bodies are changing, while their parents won't really talk to them or they find it uncomfortable, and no other source has any responsibility in actually giving them correct information, unless of course they actually take it up as an academic pursuit and they go to the library and they take out fucking medical journals and learn that way, which most kids aren't going to do. They're just going to ask their peers. She
doesn't quite mention that, but that's the thing that's interesting to me, because when I was a teenager or having sex for the first time and with my first partner for 9 months or something, it was frequent, and it was some of the dumbest sex I've ever had. It was a lot of fun and I really enjoyed it, but it was not informed or we didn't know what lube was. Nothing was anything. It was just
right.
It was just an extension of dry humping. Thing is, though, teenagers don't care to learn because it's not what they're at. That's not where teenagers' brains are at. Teenage brains, both male and female, are usually just sex, good thing, go in, feel good.
Right.
That's it.
Again. And you know what? I don't think that it's really a problem that there is in those early experiences.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Awkwardness. I think it's part of the process, right?
Yeah, it should be. It should be seen as something that's funny and fun.
The first time, yeah. What do you think you're going to do it the first time and get the platinum trophy? Maybe you should fuck it up, No,
and she does mention that there's a learning curve and all that. And I don't think she's talking about teenagers, because something tells me she didn't have any sex in her teenage years. I don't know. I just I don't. The phrasing, it seems she had partners and who weren't eager to learn. So she makes a distinction that there's a difference between not knowing versus just not caring.
If the partner really was a douchebag that didn't have a concern for, her pleasure, then, well, then why don't she fuck him? But I would say that most likely that's not the case. And what it is neither of them knew a whole lot about what they were doing if they were both inexperienced. And even if he had more partners, let's say it was her first time and it wasn't his, that doesn't mean that he's, that he necessarily knows what he's doing. And if a guy or a person only has like a few sexual experiences, they're more likely to think of their few sexual experiences as the bar by which they measure all their future sexual experiences, unless they understand that, those can be extremely varied. And so he may be thinking, well, the last girl I had sex with came, so if this girl didn't, then maybe there's something wrong with her. Or I've never been able to get it to work, and maybe I feel insecure about it because there's pressure put on me to perform, which is normally the case where, if a woman doesn't have an orgasm, we usually assume that the man was not doing something right. And
popular media has made it where the man's screwing up. Period. I was faking it. It's like one of the big comedy things. I was faking it. So it's like, oh, you failed. Ooh, sick burn. It's like, what? Fuck you. That's.
Oh, you mean she never took responsibility for her orgasm and lied to you? Wow, what a burn!
Exactly.
We know that in comparison to men, there is a harder time for women to orgasm. It's a fact.
Those are just inconvenient facts, though, man. I mean, let's ignore all those scientific articles and stuff like that, because it feels better to say that men and women are exactly the same.
So first, you take out the fact that there is a small percentage of women that can't have orgasms. Then you take out the percentage of women that that are lesbians. So I'm looking at just the heterosexual part. Then they have to be if they're in the correct conditions to have an orgasm, then that means that they're in a place where they're comfortable with a partner that they trust, who is a man, because we're talking about heterosexuals here, and we're taking out the whole like masturbation part of it. Even with that number, even when we shave it down to that point, there should be far more women having orgasms, because if you're with a partner that you love, that you want to be with, so we're not even looking at hookup culture, which may, that may also have unfortunate side effects. I know people are talking about that in terms of, building real connections with people and stuff, and then actually make sex into a performative thing that is leaving people less satisfied. So, but that's just from what I've read. But if you take all that out and you're with a partner whom you care for deeply, if you're not straight up in love with, and they feel the same way about you, and you've already communicated your sexual needs, and you're actually making the effort to really enjoy each other and focus on, to some extent, focusing on their pleasure while not neglecting your own, then women are going to have plenty of orgasms. They're gonna far outnumber it. So the only way that this study could come to that, aside from the fact that the way that the study was conducted is all wrong, but the only way that someone would see it and say, "Oh yes, this makes sense. I can buy that." That lesbian couples are like winning in the orgasm department, is that you would have to feel, at least in my opinion, that either heterosexual women are with the wrong partners because they're not getting the pleasure they're supposed to, or that men in general do not know how to please women or have no interest in doing so. Which none of those things can be accurate.
No, there's an option that you didn't look at, and that is that women are literally less capable of causing themselves to have orgasm because they can't calm their mind.
Or that they don't. That's another one. But then if you said that, then you would also have to concede that lesbian women can also have that same problem, right? That they can also.
That would be my contention, is that I would think that lesbian women are probably better at calming their mind because they probably have a little more masculine brain, and so the way in which their mind works is a little more like a man's, and therefore orgasm would just be easier for them in general, regardless of what their partner is doing.
Well, I would
just like a man.
There it is. On average, people with vulvas reach orgasm in less than 4 minutes. Citation motherfucking needed.
We have a word for people with vulvas.
Related links, theclitoris.com.
I think it's called woman.
You and your labels.
There's Go Ask Alice, related. These are related links. They're not citations. On-campus resources are not citations. Fucking Christ, people. This is Brown? Oh my God, this is Brown University. Are you fucking shitting me, Brown?
Yeah, dude.
Brown, dude. Fuck, dude. What the shit, dude?
The
What
more
are the links,
prestigious
dude?
the university,
You got a
the more
problem with
nutbag
Brown?
It is.
Fuck, Brown.
Brown lives matter. All right, well,
No, bad, wrong.
Shall we get to the list?
We have a self-report and we have a study that has no citations. All right, it's not even a study; it's just a link to Brown University. Sexy. Seems like I talked about the Brown University during Toxic Masculinity Week. Not sure. Sounds familiar, like some shitty shit I saw. Pretty sure, yeah, Brown EDU was a thing. So, all right, these statistics did not convince me. No. These statistics did not convince me, but let's just keep going anyway. Here are 12 factors that she made up that contribute to this thing the statistics don't support. So, people believe women are less sexual. That is absolutely true because women fucking say it all the time. Yeah. They talk about how men are pigs because they want sex every 5 minutes. And if women just ruled the world, there would be no thinking about sex ever.
So maybe the assertion, not necessarily that people believe that women are less sexual, but rather that men are overly sexual, so that women appear less sexual by contrast.
Well, I feel like a lot of women, especially the puritanical grandmas we mentioned earlier, the paranoid ones, they kind of bully everyone into talking about how they're a good girl and don't have sex. So I've talked about that probably in some Slutty Girls problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think that because a woman's sexuality is kind of a prized, valuable thing. It's precious.
Yeah, the chewed gum analogy.
Yeah. So I mean, like, when if a woman, because I know that, like, at least in my experiences, women who pretend like they're less sexual are usually freakier. But it's all about, like,
usually fucked up BDSM shit.
Yeah, or they just like to be dominated, or they just like sex, like they just get filthy dirty. But they put up this, I wouldn't even call it a prude exterior. It's just more of a, I'm not as interested in sex as you are exterior. Like, I don't need it as much. But then when it comes down to it,
to a man every time.
Yeah.
That's why that
exists. When the pants come down and the dicks are out, it's a different story. But I think that the reason is because, a woman that has an interest in chastity or holding on to her sexuality is considered more valuable to women as well as men. But I think especially to women, because women know that sexual currency is very powerful. That's why the number one people who usually shame sluts are other women. Yeah. Men in general don't care, or if they do, it's because they're not interested, either because they want to be valued more sexually, and maybe they value their own sex, because men do often value their own sexuality a great deal, or they're just afraid. They just think she's a risk because, she can have STDs or she could have problems, and maybe it's just not worth all that shit.
The whole winning side, the idea is because they care about women, and then they're telling women that they're shit because of their opinions.
For daring to have just wants order in the universe.
What even fuck? So, like, the Chris Cluey types and the Lee Camp and the, where they go where they are abusive and say, I hope something bad happens to a woman that doesn't believe in feminism. What the shit are you on? You're betraying the foundation of the thing that you betrayed your whole gender for. What the fuck is wrong with you? You betrayed both genders, for the male and the female, because I believe feminism hurts women first.
The reason I think that you have cum shots at the end of porn is because it tells you that the sex act is a real sex act, and it's a genuine one, even if it isn't entirely real. Like, there's like fluffers and they cut and they, reshoot things and they edit things. But it gives that illusion in the same way that, any other film would. And it's like the reason why people like to watch a film that has dance numbers in it. The dancing is real. Or a film that has really good, like, stunt choreography in action films, like a Jackie Chan movie where that he's actually doing those stunts and he's actually engaging in those fights, and it's not just him on wires on a green screen. It's similar in that regard, where you want to see the real thing. But and it's going to have more of a payoff than, say, a Hollywood sex scene is, because odds are that they're not really fucking each other, and it's heavily edited, and it's just done to make you think that it's real and it's steamy, but it's not real. It's not going to It's not going to get anybody like off in the same way that real porn does, or even better than that, amateur. The myth of blue balls, the reason for this, it basically summed up in her last paragraph where she says, even though most women know no medical condition results from an erection that doesn't lead to an orgasm, many of us feel guilty for not providing one. So in addition to some men's lack of effort to pleasure women, the pressure many women feel to pleasure men maintains the orgasm gap. So basically, the blue balls myth is a way that men manipulate women into giving them orgasms that are undeserved.
Because that's what guys do.
Yes.
They're world class.
Guys are the manipulative ones. We're the ones that are using the subtle methods to manipulate women.
You see this law, like every time a woman, swear to God, like this is so true. Every single time a woman says man's guilty of something, she's the one doing it first. This is I
cry every time.
Swear to God.
Men are so subtle. We're doing like these complex things. Let me tell you.
Yep.
We got these complex plans all laid out. You gotta watch out for men, man.
You got a hell of a plan. You guys are like motherfucking monks making your balls physically turn blue, though. That's badass. I gotta say, you got some hella manipulative ability to like accumulate deoxygenated blood in your testicles just for shits and giggles.
I was practicing that for we go to school for it. We practice it for years and years.
The whole clitoral thing, it goes. The clitoris is actually a big muscle, and I'll leave a link in the low bar to my Slutty Girls Problems article that has a diagram of it, and it actually goes all the way around. It goes from the clitoris around like the vulva and inside, like rubs against kind of like the rectum, the tube, and so yeah.
The poop chute.
Yep.
We hope you enjoyed this clip show. If there was a clip from these shows you think we should have shown, please leave a comment on the video and include a timestamp. Thank you, and Badger on.